Hello and welcome to Circle Passages and Higher Ground. It's December 13th, no 14th, that was yesterday, Friday the 13th, so we have the aftermath of a lucky day. And we're here at TCTV, TC Media Studio in Olympia, and always an incredible co-host is Dr. Heather Taylor Zimmerman, and some incredible artwork that you've got here tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Buck.
Oh, yes.
We've got the theme of transformational trauma.
That sounds pretty heavy.
Well, it turns out it's a thing, which is a good thing. So that's that concept that a breakdown is a breakthrough, and that 30 to 50% of people who have acute trauma have a transformational experience. So it's the silver lining.
What's that percentage? I'm sorry?
Well, 30 to 50%, which
Okay.
seems like it would be 40%, but that's the way they write it. So, yeah. So the beauty is that, when we have those initiating crises, that they are opportunity. The silver lining is that we have a growth experience. Yeah.
Sounds like a great recipe to me, and especially, but it's when you're right in the middle of the trauma. So how are we working through that to get to that point of really recognizing this is an opportunity?
Yeah, so I've constellated some images around. I went out to my studio and I was like, what can speak to today? And actually, one of the wonderful people helping was reminding me that the Virgin of Guadalupe's feast day is 2 days ago, December 12th. And so essentially the images are speaking to what you're talking about. How do we work with the trauma to make the sacrifice sacred? That's the root. Instead of just suffering, instead of just trauma, how do we catalyze that to be that growth experience? And so the method to the madness is I thought we could speak to something that's happening tonight or tomorrow morning, early, which is Sagittarius, the full moon. And then we have the winter solstice.
A few days away.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was thinking about it, and so this is a tree of life image, and the tree of life is like the most synthetic map of creation. It's a map, archetypal map of human involution and evolution, like the roots of the tree going down and branching up. And so Yesod over here is connected with Sagittarius, and it's Jupiter. Sagittarius is our full moon that we're essentially in right now. And it's the wounded healer, Chiron the centaur. And so I thought that was another way to speak of this experience of transformative trauma. And what do we do now when we're in the midst of kind of a traumatic event, which is almost like humanity on Earth? And then how do we, the image of the centaur with the arrow, flaming arrow to the stars. How do we get the inspiration of looking up to the heavens? Because one of the aspects of this Sagittarius full moon is seeing the big picture. How do we heal through the experience? And in a way, shooting an arrow is like you have a single pointed arrow to the stars, but you're also looking at the heavens, which is a bigger picture. You're getting out of the muck and the mire that is human experience, U.S. politics, etc. Just, we can be so crazy, Buck.
Yeah,
and then you look at the heavens, and it's like beauty and kind of the order and the chaos, if you will, to look up at the stars. And so that seemed like an apt image for us to make this a transformational experience of trauma as we move through the darkness of winter and the darkness of a dark night of the soul.
That description that you just gave, having the arrow, so a very finite point, literally a point, and usually, say we're shooting it at some, a target or whatever it might be, is to try to get a bullseye. But what this is kind of doing is it's hitting a bullseye, but it's opening our view of, like you said, the heavens and the universe that's out there. And wow, what a way to take it from something very finite to, oh my goodness.
Yeah, when we look up, and it also opens our heart. So Hesed is about loving kindness, and it's on the pillar of mercy. All of those words sound really lovely. Loving kindness, what? Yeah. And so, that self-compassion is what we need in this time of trauma. As the wounded healer, the archetype of the wounded healer, the centaur happens to be the mythic archetypal image. And so as healers, when we heal ourselves, we can heal others. And to me, that's what makes that trauma to transformational shift, the breakdown to breakthrough, is if we heal ourselves, we can heal the world in our image. And so loving kindness, not having the arrow be something where we're hurting each other, but really an arrow where we point at our North Star, I tend to think, like our soul or whatever our higher aspect is, and then we become that. So it's almost like through the arrow and through the vision, we are one with the target. And so I like to believe it's loving kindness at this time back.
Definitely. So that process that you're talking about, both working with different individuals, different ages in a counseling or therapeutic modality, if you would, but it's to kind of help someone along on that path. And at least to me, it was always kind of lead them to the path, but let them find the path themselves, if you would, and take it. So how do we do that part of it? Because there are a lot of folks who are out there feeling this trauma right now, feeling stress, and to help them, find that stuff right there that you're talking about within themselves.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I noticed in two of the images is we have this kind of fetal position, which is death and rebirth, which is part of this time period that we're in. And rest and restoration to actually, gestate. This is chrysalis. So, to have the trauma be transformational, we have to take a moment. And this whole period we're in right now is the fallow period, if you want to think of agriculture and nature itself, herself. It's like going fallow. It's resting, restoring, self-care. Like we tend to think of self-care as like a mani-pedi or something, but like really deep self-care where you give yourself time to just lie there and to experience what you're feeling inside your body. And you could even do a body scan and be like, how do I feel? Where do I feel tension in my body? I think we have such deep woundedness about all the the shame and the blame and the trauma history that we hold in our body. So taking time to really, kind of be in our body, be in this kind of winter movement of the fallow period, and take stock, do a body scan, do an inventory, and then tend to yourself. How do you feel? Maybe you feel like crying. I think a lot of us have a backlog of, actually feeling what we're feeling. Maybe you could do art, to get this out. But to really begin with just tuning into the body, resting, doing things like, hydrating, just basic body care. Because I think one of the hazards that we have in the trauma history is that we don't feel we're worthy. One of the net results and part of our constant barrage of media and things, whether it's social media images or, the constantly buy something, is that you're not innately good or not innately good enough. And so to just really be with ourselves and in a way be with our wounded child and then see what they need. What do we really need in this period of going within in this fallow winter period, this cocoon?
And I think you're describing there are different ways of doing that. One being meditation, where taking some period of time in a quiet spot. It could be listening to music. It could be just you and your thoughts. But it's the breathing. So activating that vagus nerve, because in any emergency situation, usually you see the EMTs or whoever the folks are saying, take some deep breaths.
Right.
And what's that all about? Well, it's activating that. That's what's going to help calm us. But to kind of regroup, get centered is what it sounds like you're also talking about.
Yeah, and in labor, the same thing.
Definitely. I wouldn't know,
you know,
but
yeah. So take a deep breath, get yourself into the parasympathetic, relax. But breathing, they've done studies, and it's not, you know, the mantra, yantra, whatever. It's the breath. You know, is how we self-regulate. So yeah, perfect. Returning with your breath, and then I think we are kind of healing, giving birth to ourselves. So the whole, you know, winter solstice is coming, and there's so much of a movement for that with giving birth and then the sun god. But for me, I'm also really present to the birthing mother, you know, like the dark Madonna or that whatever image it is, like, you know, the Virgin of Guadalupe, but, you know, being present to the birthing process, which is a traumatic transformational experience. Not just the results, the son being rebirthed in whatever mythic form, but really like tending to yourself in this experience of transforming, which turns out it's kind of traumatic.
yeah, it certainly can be. So,
Yeah.
and how do we recognize that I mean, I know that sounds pretty odd perhaps, of how do we know we're feeling that trauma? What, is there some things that might be clues for us of feeling upset?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple of things come to mind. One is that we're so disassociated from our body. So that's where the dropping into the, you'll notice the earth and the roots and the body. When we drop into our body, we drop into our own shadow and trauma history, but also the earth. You know, it's this major move, and then we become self-aware. You can do a body scan or meditation, walk and hike in the woods, a medicine walk, whatever it is, but really become present to how you feel, because so much of our lives, we're so busy, we're kind of like spinning tops, that we're disassociated. We're like, have left our body. If we have a lot of trauma, we also leave our body. So as someone who's had some sexual assault and different things, you know, it takes an active healing, like Chiron, the wounded healer, to come back into your body. So yeah, the biggest thing I think is to become still. The fallow period, and I mean, Christmas is this irony because it's like, you know, but it's really winter. Think of falling snow. It's just this blanketing of stillness. And so becoming still is a way to become present.
Great place to start. And I
Yeah.
think, to me, the meditation allows you to do that. So you take yourself down to, you're trying to still the mind, which is always racing, it seems, the breathing, hopefully helping that. And then as you're working through the meditation, hopefully that's where the light starts happening, or here are some ways I can take care of this situation today, or please help me with my trauma, you know,
Yeah.
help me figure out how I can work through it. And obviously there are others out in the community who are there for that very reason, to help, you know, again, the counselors, therapists, but with circle passages, let's say like the rites of passage, and
Yeah.
doing a vision quest. I'm kind of hoping that we can revive that aspect to help with many of these things that are taking place.
Yeah, no, well, for sure do vision quests, and I do think when you drop into your body, it's a different kind of vision quest. Like there are many different kinds of vision quests. And so the other thing that I know we both have as a practice is medicine walks, which is a shorter vision quest. But a lot of people aren't comfortable meditating because they're, you know, maybe it's the monkey mind, but they just, maybe also they're kinesthetic learners and they're just more comfortable doing a moving meditation. And so a medicine walk where you go walk in nature, and especially the nighttime, which is in a lot of these, nighttime starts at 4 right now, so we've got a lot of night. But, you know, to be under the stars, and that has its own kind of cocooning experience, you know, but safely, you know, doing a medicine walk, even if you just stand barefoot on the earth under the stars for a little bit and cocoon in that way. But find your way to go inward, but there's a paradox where you're also going outward. And so a medicine walk, whether it's through a forest or just standing still, breathing with the trees outside, you know, find your own way to do it. But again, you're tuning in and out. You know, you're tuning into your breath and your body, and that allows you to connect with the natural world outside.
So it's this one right here where right at the bottom looks like working on phases of the moon, but also you mentioned something earlier, phases of the seasons. So the winter solstice coming up in a few days, the darkest day of the year.
Yeah.
And then I think what you were also alluding to is then we're starting to work toward the light again.
Yeah.
And then spring, which is going to be rebirth, right? So
Yeah.
giving birth.
Giving birth, and then I guess the movement that I'm aware of right now is really, there's such a hyperfixation in the Western mind and psyche with movement and achievement and growth, and it's like yes and, you know, and so part of me is like, well, what if we just really tune into the cocoon? What if we really tune into the experience of the birthing mother, Mother Nature Matter, instead of the light of consciousness? Not like that isn't literally and metaphorically brilliant, it is, but we're so fixated on that. What if we just go out and we are under the stars and we just really fall in love with the night sky and we just steep ourselves in that without feeling the impulse to rush forward to the light?
Well, the image that you've kind of presented earlier with the arrow and up into the heavens, kind of keeping that for ourselves. And if it's a point of reflection during the day when I'm starting to feel anxious, how can I chill? How can I calm myself down? You know, the deep breathing certainly can, but even thinking about that arrow getting up into the heavens, but then look what it just showed me, or it is showing me.
Yeah, I drink in the starlight at night. I mean, I'm so in love with that, but I'm also present when you're talking about, if you take a stance, I'm not an archer, I won't pretend to be an archer, but you know, like let's say I'm pulling the arrow back, but the stance is a power stance. Your feet, your legs are rooted on the earth, and so it's like, to me, it's another form of this kind of tree of life, connecting heaven and earth. You're rooted on the earth and you're, you know, aiming to the stars. And so there's got to be an appreciation of both of those movements. And that's one of the things I love about the tree of life is that, you know, this is the feminine pillar, and then the one on the other side is the masculine. This one, Bina, and this pillar has been demonized. So 666 is the sacred number of the feminine. That is not coincidentally the number of the beast. You know? So, and the body has that, you know, hell on earth. And so we need to really, that's I guess why I'm so appreciative of the Dark Mother and of the birth, like the birth pangs of the mother and the sacrifice. Sacrifice has that root sacred, sacrare, to make sacred, which to me is like that movement of transformational trauma, and to honor the sacrifice of the mother who gives birth to the light. The darkness and the dark Madonna that gives birth to light, because so often she's demonized, you know, if she's not forgotten. And so I want to honor that as well, I guess, at this time.
So you're speaking of demonizing. Who's actually creating that situation? Who's doing that?
The demonization?
Yes.
Well, okay, so, you know, patriarchy, rule of the father and the mother is great. Everything's about balance, right? So literally Lilith became a baby-eating demon, you know, because she refused to be under Adam. Baba Yaga was a Vasilisa, the Cinderella myth. She's a dark mother. You know, this, and she's a baby-eating demon. This is like, there's a pattern here.
Yes.
And a mother who eats their children is not a good mother. So that's part of this image. So part of it is reclaiming these feminine wisdom figures, you know, and figures of empowerment, and the dark Madonnas, the dark mothers, like in the Song of Solomon, the dark mother, who's also the forgotten one, and she's forgotten and demonized. And then the last image is an angel of death, because Lilith marries Samael, death, and you know, death also gets a bit of a bad rap.
It certainly does, yes. But we have to do that, supposedly, in order to live.
And to be reborn, yeah.
Reborn, yes.
Yeah.
So what's happening right there? What would you say? This.
Well, so it's a bit of a power symbol, but the whole movement with that one was, I had this body scan I had to do about the cancer. So it would essentially tell me if the cancer had metastasized, which would mean death, essentially, pretty rapidly. So I'm about to go to this literal doctor's appointment, and this angel of death is kind of in the room with me, and I'm like, great, like I'm trying not to read into this, but this doesn't seem like a good omen. And so they go to this meeting and are actually kind of sitting in the lobby with me, and it takes me 3 days to pay attention to this angel, because fear, overcoming fear, is part of what we're doing in all of this, right? Fear of the night, fear of the darkness, fear of the unknown, fear of death. And so when I finally pay attention to death, and I get my lab results back afterwards, and I'm good, so that's yay. But so when I finally pay attention to death, I'm literally holding death over to the side, and finally I look at death, and I'm like, okay, and it's Thanatos, which turns out it's more an angel of immortality, and is the child of Nyx, who is night. But so what happens is I look at death, this angel of death, and I go like in this image beyond them. And it's like a portal where I go into the night sky and into the cosmos and have this amazing, almost rapturous experience of union with the night, where it's just like transcendence. Hard to even know exactly what you'd call it, but beautiful, immortal, like life in this way that's beyond life and death. And then I come back, and all he does, he doesn't say anything. He gives me 3 flowers. And so one was a carnation, which turns out, I didn't know flower language, so I had to look this up. But a carnation is a symbol of the mother, but it supposedly was born from the earth, from the tears of Mary, the Virgin Mary, when she watched Jesus be, on the cross, sacrificed. And so I thought that's symbol of death. And then the chrysanthemum, which has a bunch of different symbols, but is, there's a Japanese story where this god goes and he follows his departed wife into the underworld and is a chrysanthemum moving into death. And it's also Zeus's flower and all these different things. And then finally, so it has almost like death and then this image of resurrection in different mythologies around the world. And then the lotus was the third one, and that's like this kind of unfolding, eternal, immortal life that is just this recurring. And so it was this beautiful experience of when you confront death, because literally I was, especially when I was going to the doctor's appointment, getting results like that is the most stressful time, especially when they would indicate, essentially you're going to die. So it was just this beautiful movement of enantiodromia where you move into the opposite, like it's life instead of death, and it's hope and beauty instead of fear and agony or whatever else, So that's what I guess I would invite people into in this time of the darkness and night and death and, all these different things, is that there's this movement in and through, like the trauma that's transformation. It's a breakdown to break through. It's the nigredo and the shadow in alchemy that moves into the albedo, the darkness into light. But you need to go through the death for the rebirth.
And it seems like it's just an instinct of ours, human instinct of, I want to get through this. If I can, especially, but I want to get through this, is to get to wellness and get to the light. But there's also a school that says, in a sense, to kind of wallow or stay in the darkness and kind of see what you feel and with the hope that and with the efforts that I'm going to work toward the light and get there. But don't be so quick to dispel it or try to deny it. Is kind of be with it if you can with that darkness. It's not easy, but hopefully that's what also helps us. Kind of a little nudge, or I don't need a nudge. I'm trying to get to the top of the surface so I can breathe again.
Yeah, but you bring up a beautiful point that it's Jung, the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, said that 90% of our shadow is golden. So like the repressed, cut off parts of ourself are really our greatness, not our weakness. And Hades, the underworld, you know, that we're all like kicking and screaming, not trying to be abducted into Hades, but he was the Lord of riches. Like our buried treasures are found in the underworld. And all of these sun gods and also, you know, Persephone, Psyche, Inanna, these different goddesses moved into the underworld to claim their power. So yeah, we need to stay with the darkness a little bit to really reap the benefit of the transformation, as much as we want to go, you know, running through to the other side.
It's just our nature, it seems, right? Is let me get through this. The
Yeah.
other thing that's just, it jumps right out there is the symbolism of some of what you've got here. You know, there's the darkness again, and there's the beauty of flowers. You know, we think of those more often than not of beautiful, and but there's that other part, Tears of Mary, and the Lady of Guadalupe, I think is who she's representing. That's Mary.
Yeah.
So those tears, and even that, you know, he's kind of thinking already, supposedly. This is just a transition itself. The really cool thing is about to happen when this body dies. Then I'm going to see the light. I am going to live again. But being the human form that we are, and even Mary is shedding tears for the sadness.
Yeah, and honestly, you know Jude, who did the drumming workshop, and you know, she died with a tear on her cheek. I say that death is transformation, and it is, and it's immortality, and it's like that whole cosmic, mind, heart-blowing experience, and we don't necessarily want to die. But so it's all of those things. It's the rich earth of that whole mixture of things. But it's the deep appreciation of the balance, you know, that we need to not fear the night sky. You know, we need to come back into our bodies to see what's present. You know, there's that saying, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe of the soul, that Hermetic adage. And we spend so much time out, you know, extroversion versus introversion. So this is just that movement of balance to come back home to the body and, you know, to be present to all of life, which part of it is death. You know, we're moving towards death. We walk in the park all the time and, you know, these nurse logs are like the most living tree is one that's a snag, that's dead, the most dead, you know, so it's like that paradox.
New life is springing from what we think is, well, that's dead.
Yeah.
It's gone. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty interesting stuff. And to me, the beginning of the day, because that's what has been important to me, the meditation part of kind of gathering myself, getting centered as much as is possible, but to kind of move forward. And that 20 minutes just really gives a lot of juice and energy to the remaining 23 hours and 40 minutes of a 24-hour day. So that day, anyway. But it's to kind of start within, and then, like you said, once we can kind of pull this part together, then we can usually share with others of, here are some ways that might think about working through such and such, whatever the trauma might be. But that the transition from the trauma to the light is so cool. And you know, you've really done it here with the balanced piece that you were just talking about.
Yeah, and well, and what you're saying about, you know, going within, I like to do, even if it's fast, because I do know sometimes we hit the ground running, you know, especially if we slept in, you know, but kind of greeting the day, giving thanks to the sun and greeting the moon and giving thanks to the moon and really recognizing and kind of bringing to consciousness or bringing to center our focus to be present, you know, to the present, the gift of both of those experiences, you know, that they both have their gifts and their teachings.
as you mentioned, walking through the trails at Evergreen and going down to the water, and even with the tide, sometimes is there going to be enough beach for us to walk on, or are we going to have to take a different route?
Yeah.
But like the other day, kind of coming out of this little lagoon. A crane, blue heron, and it's just being in nature. That's so reviving, isn't it? The gentleman that shared with us, so vermilion waxed tops,
yeah.
so reddish orange mushroom,
Yeah.
and it seems like kind of rare, but there was a little family of them on the trails that we're taking. So again, the beauty of of what is out there in nature is always so wonderful.
Yeah, and bringing your presence, it's like a little bit of an Easter egg hunt, a mushroom hunt, or, just being present, like the great blue heron, is its own meditation, to be in the forest or to be wherever you are and actually be fully present.
Definitely. I wanted to come back to this. So you were describing being in the doctor's office. You had some tests done. You're waiting to discuss more of that, but certainly the results. And is that how this painting came as a result of that? That came later, as you were kind of going through?
Yeah, this painting came after 3 days. So this being showed up, and I could tell they were an angel of death, and I was honestly kind of ignoring them. I was not ready to face them. And that's okay too. Like, that's a form of self-compassion, to be like, okay, you're not ready yet. They're there. It's okay. And then, I went to the lobby, went to the doctor's appointment. But then it was after the third day, and he didn't look at me. He put his head down, and that's how I went kind of through this almost portal of space behind him in this vision. And then he gave me the 3 flowers when I came back. So this is a bit of a time lapse of me just trying to capture the experience of what that was.
That's incredible to be able to do that, and obviously right here with so much imagery, color. To see death here is kind of a stretch, it seems, because there's so much vibrancy. It's amazing, but it's there. Like you said.
And it turns out I don't know where exactly I found it, but Thanatos is like peaceful death, and there's also a reference to immortality. And I do think for my dance with death and cancer, and some of the visions, like when we were doing a meditation out by the water, and that what I realized was that the eagle that I thought was life was really death. I mean, that death is life and life is death, and when we get closer to death, we come closer to life. Like, you cannot separate those two out. That's a false notion. And so you have to really kind of confront your fear to move through it into a deeper life or living. And so that's that whole paradox. And so I do think death is life, and in the Thanatos, it is a peaceful death. And maybe that's even, you could say, what I experienced, the peace of death. I have no idea. Yeah.
But you've come through it, and it's been, 5 years?
Yeah.
So
this was about
bill.
3 years ago. But
Well, yes, this is the moment of darkness or anticipation of what are these results going to be. And I remember you talking about that, where it just was not sounding real positive of what your chances were.
Yeah.
But lo and behold.
Yeah. And, it's also, we are born to die. So it's like this dance with life and death is that we, like this, it's to live it in balance, to live it in balance between the masculine and feminine, all of those opposites, including life and death as one. And so things like this really help me, because if I had to say one thing that I think is throwing us as a species right now out of balance, it's our fear of death. And so death is not what we think it is. this death, this angel of death was really a union. Like we think of it, I think, as separation from life. We think of it as darkness. We think of it in all these certain ways. And so this is an invitation to go within in all these different ways and to see what's there. And there are bejeweled heavens in our earth, so to speak.
So with the different kinds of things we experience throughout our lives, it's kind of like hopefully providing us with some clues of embrace this process. I mean, like you just said, as soon as you're born, you really, at some point, you're going to pass on. And something I've believed for a long, long time is incarnation. So in order to get to that next incarnation, this body's got to give it up.
Yeah.
So I can move on to here's what's new, and then take hopefully what's been going on through all of these incarnations previously to here's the new one. And there'll be some lessons in that new one, but hopefully I can't do that until I've left this body, though.
Yeah, and I like that because it also brings you to, what are the psychic seeds in your soil, when you check into your body and you tune in. And I believe in reincarnation too. So then it's like, what are the lessons of this lifetime? What is up for me? And what am I repressing? And then tuning into that, because the darkness, another way to think of it is, the shadows, what we don't want to deal with. Obviously, right? We're kicking and screaming, avoiding. I've been joking with myself about how part of this is like Persephone being abducted and being like, okay, Hades, put me down. I'll walk willingly into the underworld, And then it's like doing an inventory of what are the psychic seeds from this incarnation, past incarnations. What am I not dealing with that, needs to be addressed? Come to flower. What is growing within you?
And it's just incredible. Every piece that I've seen that you do, and here are three amazing pieces that, you bring so much of who you are and what you've experienced to the canvas. It's like you're this wizard, and you are.
Well, it's a form of meditation. Like that's what I do think is a lot of people struggle to be, to meditate in the traditional way. And I think doing art is a form of meditating, like the medicine walk and things like that. And it's a form of dialoguing with the unconscious/superconscious, where you'll realize insights that your conscious mind wasn't willing to receive, and then you can get them through the art.
So I just put a coin in the machine, I'm going to get this little prize.
Try it, yeah.
Yeah, so, and to me, I'm going to ask you, the prize is, so what would you suggest, what the prize is going to be of working through the transitional trauma? If we can really try to compact that as much as possible to get it through that machine, and I'm going to
so one of the other contenders that I didn't bring is art that took me to my sexual abuse. But so the trick of going and being abducted into hell, right? None of us want to go, right? None of us want to have cancer. None of us want death in the room, per se. But the trick is that the wounded healer has to go to the wound and the core of the wound and heal. And that when you surrender to this kind of process, you're like, Hades, put me down, I can walk, let's go. Then sacrifice becomes sacred instead of just suffering, and trauma becomes transformational. You learn your lessons. And then it's actually, in my experience, like this one, it's grace. Like when I went through that art to my sexual abuse, you'd think that would be horrible. It was transcendently graceful, which is another word for yes, it is grace, so it's something we can't get to kind of with our separative self, but if we surrender to this process, then somehow it becomes graceful in a way that is transformational.
There it is. I think there's that little nugget of surrender.
Surrender.
If we can do that, so many other things happen, right? Just what you've described.
Yeah, and to go back to the, rebirth there's no, like in one of my births, I was like, okay, is there a way off this train? And my midwife's like, obviously not, you know? So yeah, I mean, kicking or screaming, we are going through this process, and we will make it way worse if we don't actively participate in our own initiation, which is where we get the transformational trauma. So, I mean, to me, it's almost like it's a practical solution. It's spiritual and other things too, but it's just practical. It's like, let's get down and do this.
Absolutely. As always, thank you for sharing today,
Oh,
and
thank
just
you.
again some amazing artwork and who you are to be able to do this. Incredible. But thank you, and
Thank you, Beck, and thank you to all the amazing people here that make this happen.
definitely in the control room, behind the scenes, because without them we wouldn't be doing this,
We
right?
literally wouldn't be here. Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you next show.
Thanks, Beck.